So you probably think of AI as just a tool, right? Something we use to get work done, maybe a little faster. But what if it's way more than that? What if it's a force that's quietly, and I mean silently, rewriting the rules of power inside our companies? Well, today, we're diving into some really fascinating stuff that explains how AI is completely changing who's actually in charge. And that brings us right to the heart of it, the big question for today. In a company where AI is everywhere, making suggestions, running processes, even taking action on its own, who truly holds the power? Is it the CEO, the data scientist who built the model, or maybe is it the system itself? Let's dig in. All right, first big idea, and it's a bold one, your company's org chart. It's basically a lie. I mean, all those neat boxes and lines we're used to seeing, they're becoming a map that just doesn't show you where the real power is anymore. It used to be so simple. You had a title, manager, director, VP, and that title gave you authority. That's what we call title-based authority. But in the world we're living in now, a completely new kind of power is taking over, cognitive authority. And this has nothing to do with your rank. It's all about your ability to interpret what's happening, to understand the context, and to make those critical judgment calls. It's not about who has the corner office. It's about who gets it. And this shift leads to a wild phenomenon that the source material calls authority inversion. So what's happening is the formal hierarchy, the one everyone can see, it stays put. It still looks like the VP is calling the shots. But behind the scenes, the actual decision-making power has already moved somewhere else entirely. So if power isn't tied to a title anymore, what is it tied to? Well, this next part gets right to the heart of the matter. Power is now flowing directly to the people who have the deepest, most intuitive understanding of how these complex systems actually work. And this new cognitive authority, it's not some kind of magic. It's actually a mix of three very specific things. First, it's about who can see the whole playing field, the entire system. Second, it's about who can weigh all the complicated trade-offs and make a call. And third, and this one is absolutely crucial, it's about who mentally owns the consequences of a decision. You find the person with all three of those, and I guarantee you, that's where you'll find the real authority. And you can see this happening all over the place. The analyst who's swimming in the data every single day, they can draw way better conclusions than a director who's just looking at a high-level summary. The frontline operator who's interacting with the AI constantly has way more real-world context than an executive in a boardroom. And of course, the AI agents themselves can execute tasks faster than any human manager could ever hope to. Power is literally shifting, down and out, to the edges where the deepest understanding lives. Okay, this brings us to an idea that's, frankly, a little bit scary. What happens when the AI stops being just a helpful tool and starts becoming an active player that actually dictates the terms of a decision for us? Just look at this timeline, because timing is everything here. An AI system makes a choice and acts on it in milliseconds. But for a human to really understand what happened and verify it, that can take minutes, hours, sometimes even months. By the time we've caught up, the ball's already rolling and the consequences are in motion. The system's sheer speed creates this momentum that pretty much makes the decision for us. The source calls this temporal authority drift. So what about that whole human-in-the-loop thing we always hear about? The idea that a person is always there to sign off on the AI's actions? Well, a lot of the time, that just becomes what this research calls symbolic oversight. It's the illusion of control. It's you clicking approve on an AI's recommendation without having any deep, real understanding of why that recommendation was made in the first place. It's not governance, it's just rubber stamping. So here's the bottom line, the key takeaway. Real authority isn't about checking a box after the system has already set things in motion. It's about having that deep cognitive ownership before the decision is even made. Anything else is just us trying to make sense of it after the fact. Okay, so if the formal org chart is broken and AI is warping our whole sense of control, where in the world did all the real power go? Well, it's moved into this hidden, invisible layer of governance that we really need to start paying attention to. So who are the new power players? They're not defined by their seniority anymore, but by their model fluency. These are the emergent cognitive elites. We're talking about the people who truly get how the AI thinks and behaves, the operators who work side by side with it every single day, and the architects who can see how all these different systems plug into each other. These are the new authority figures, whether they have the job titles to match or not. And the world these elites operate in,
The source has a great name for it: Shadow Cognitive Governance. This is the real org chart. It's built on informal chats, Slack DMs, back channels. It's the people you really go to when you need to understand how something works or figure out how to get something done. This is where true authority now lives. And here's the part that should really get your attention. This quote from the research just says it all. These incredibly powerful informal networks are completely invisible to all our traditional ways of managing a company. Your compliance team can't see them. Auditors will never find them. They operate entirely in the shadows of the formal structure. All of this, the hidden power, the invisible networks, the speed of AI, it all leads to the most important question of all. If power is scattered everywhere, hidden between people and systems, who is actually responsible when things inevitably go wrong? See, the foundation of any real accountability is something called cognitive ownership. And this isn't just about making one decision at one point in time. It's about carrying the mental weight, the responsibility for the consequences of that decision long after it's been made. It's a deep, sustained ownership of the final outcome. And that brings us to this huge myth about delegating to AI. We think we can just hand off a task and wash our hands of the responsibility. But that's not how it works. You can delegate the work, sure, but what you can't delegate is the moral liability. You can't delegate the ultimate responsibility for the consequences. That always, always stays with a human. And when we forget that, we end up with something called moral diffusion. Because ownership gets so fragmented and spread out across different people and different AI models, it becomes incredibly easy for everyone to pass the buck. No single person feels responsible. And that's how bad things happen, with everyone saying, hey, I was just following the process, or the system told me to do it. Which brings us to this final, really tough question. In this new world, where authority is everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and ownership is shattered into a million little pieces, is anyone at all, truly accountable for what happens in the end? You know, the popular story is that AI is going to democratize power and flatten organizations. But this research leaves us with a much, much more sobering thought. Unchecked, AI doesn't spread authority out, it just rewires it, silently, creating brand new power centers and a huge crisis of accountability before we even realize what's going on. Definitely something to think about.